and welcome to the D-Tools What's the Buzz podcast, episode number 3. I'm Jason Knott, data solutions architect and evangelist at D-Tools, and alongside me is my co-host, Tim Bigoness, Chief Marketing Officer. Hey, Tim.
Hey, Jason. Hey, thanks for having me, and glad to be here. I'm really excited for our time today because our guest is someone I consider a kindred spirit and really embodies what we're trying to do here at D-Tools, which is really just help integrators run better businesses and understand what they should be looking at.
Yep, I agree 100%. And speaking of that kindred spirit, let's introduce him. Matt Bernath, president of Vital, one of the top consulting companies in the industry. Hey, Matt, thanks for joining us.
Hey, fellas, thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
Yeah, you bet. Hey, before we jump into our topic at hand, we just started this podcast series. If you like what you're seeing and hearing, please go ahead and subscribe on either Spotify or Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. That would be awesome. And what we kind of like to do here is we look at this as an opportunity to really spend some time with our industry friends in between the trade shows and all the cool conversations that we have. And we want to make sure the time's meaningful, but also have a little fun. So, before we jump into the meat, Matt, maybe you could share a little with us, kind of a little bit about your journey and what kind of led you to Vital.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I've actually been around custom electronics pretty much my whole life. Started in car audio in my senior year in high school, worked my way through all different facets of that business. And then in 2006, I actually saw, that industry sort of waning and home AV picking up, and decided to start a custom integration company here in Southern California. And I had never worked for anybody in the industry, but I was putting myself through business school, and I thought, you know what, I can do this. I'm sure, it looks like fun, and I really, really love the tech. So of course I made every mistake in the book. Thankfully, the business was young enough and small enough to make it through the Great Recession. Learned a whole bunch, and found myself in about 2014, 2015 timeframe, recognizing that I wanted to get to a certain destination. I wanted to get there a lot faster than I was at the time. So I met Steve first, who was one of the founders of Vital. Hired him on as my business coach, and for the next few years, we built the business, grew it, became incredibly profitable, and in 2018, I found myself in a position where it was time for a change, and I ended up selling my integration company, and actually took the summer off after
Nice.
After that sale. Yeah, so I got to hang out with my girls and kind of catch up a little bit on some of the things that I missed. And during that time, I sort of fell into a coaching engagement completely outside of the industry. And for about 15 months, I helped this traffic control company. It was about 50 people, to not only turn it around, but also sell it to a public company, and had a really incredible time in that coaching experience. And found myself in a position where I wanted to coach other businesses, but didn't know where to start. And so at that point, I actually ran back into Steve and Paul in 2019 after the Bravos deal closed, and said, hey guys, what are you going to do with this whole Vital thing? And long story short, I became a coach for Vital for a little while, and recognized very quickly that I needed to put my foot down on the gas pedal of another business. And that's where we came to terms on me taking over Vital, and I purchased the company along with a couple of other incredible partners in September 2021. Actually, CEDIA timeframe 2021 we took over, and since then it's been an incredible ride. We've impacted so many lives, and I actually set a personal goal before I started with Vital of impacting over 1 million people by 2025, because I just truly fell in love with that level of satisfaction and helping others. And we figured out that if we transform about 1,000 integrators, we think that ends up impacting over 1 million people, and pretty darn close. So it's exciting stuff.
That is awesome. That's awesome. So how many customers are you working with currently?
Yeah, we meet with about 100 integrators every single year to do financial benchmarking exercises, and that increases every single year. Some of those financial benchmarking meetings, we recognize that there's a fit with what we do. Of course, not everybody is offered a membership. Not everybody qualifies, but for those that do, we offer a membership, and a lot of people sign on, and we actually are up to 70 members at the moment. We target about 100 by the end of this year, and those are all different different types of engagements, and ultimately begin with figuring out where those businesses are today and where they want to be down the road.
Yeah, awesome. Good stuff. Thanks for sharing. Jason, I'm going to hand it off to you, and we can do a deeper dive, and I want to hear more.
All right, let's start on a high note. What are some of the common positive traits and best practices that you encounter that integrators are doing out there right now?
Yeah, good question. So, 2 years ago, when we started our CI Business Mastery webinar series, which is a monthly webinar series, we did a bunch of surveys throughout that process, and we noticed in our second year of doing that, that a number of these businesses actually improved some of the metrics that we were talking about in year number one, and ultimately what we're seeing is kind of a twofold change industry wide. We'd like to think that it's some of the education we're providing, but I think it's also a maturation of the industry. Integrators, by and large, are valuing their labor much greater than they did in the past. I think they're figuring out that, or they're recognizing that, of course, that's their big differentiator. And also there's an interest in data-driven decisions. I wish that was much stronger than it is today, but integrators, I think broadly, are recognizing that the most successful businesses in any industry are tracking data and tracking KPIs and measuring against those, and we're recognizing that that's happening a little bit at a time throughout our industry.
All right, let's flip the script a little bit. What are some of the common mistakes that you're encountering with these integration companies out there?
Yeah, we really see two major mistakes or challenges, and the first is that sales cures all. And revenue is critical. Don't get me wrong, but sales can hide a lot of issues throughout the business, and we've also thanks to COVID and some other things, have had 15 years of really solid growth throughout our industry. And we're now seeing a bit of a rubber banding effect, across the nation from COVID. But I think that's the biggest one, is that, there's this misconception that volume is the solution. And there's certainly some economies of scale in our industry, but you have to get to a point, a really large integration company, to start seeing some of those economies of scale. Otherwise, it's just one more job, one more bit of chaos. And if you don't have all the operations dialed in, or at least on their way to being dialed in, you can lose a lot of profit on those jobs, right? The second one that we see is undervaluing the admin, bookkeeper, controller role. In part because many times these integration businesses will start out fairly small with somebody they trust, a friend, a family member. Maybe that person doesn't have bookkeeping experience, but they're trustworthy. And then that person stays along the journey way too long. And the business becomes more complex, and the needs on the financial side of the business are more complex, but yet the person in that seat hasn't really grown to the degree that the business needs to grow. So we see a lot of fairly mature integration companies with what I'll call immature financial practices. And where that's holding them back is their inability to manage cash flow, profitability, really to dial in the metrics. And ultimately, they're just surviving on the financial side of the business while the rest of the business grows and thrives. So those are the two major ones that we see.
So when you look at an integration company, there's so many phases to running a project or a business. You've got from hiring, then you get into the installation, the marketing, the selling, the service management, the project management. If you could pinpoint one area where integrators really need to determine a best practice, what area would that be? And maybe give us a hint on what that best practice might be.
Yeah, this is a big topic. We could go on for hours with this one. The key thing is to measure what you want to improve, and don't try to boil the ocean. So I think that's the biggest issue that we come across, or the most overwhelming thing is that many business owners have this long list. They go to all these conferences and business sessions, and they end up with these long lists of things they want to do, but it's like eating an elephant, right? And so we're an industry full of perfectionists who truly focus on the tech and not the business. There are some exceptions for sure, but by and large, we're an industry of perfectionists who love the technology, right? And so when integrators focus on sound best practices on their business side, the rest becomes so much easier. So when you start to unpack all of these challenges that you brought up, the improvement in cash flow and profit can fix nearly every issue in the CI business. So when we have these business meetings and the benchmarking, the financial benchmarking meetings with our members and customers, they'll bring up all these challenges, right? I mean, there's just like constant. Thankfully, they're very open with us. They bring up all these challenges, and most of those challenges can be tied back to either a lack of profit or a lack of cash flow or both. And even the hiring piece, right, that we all have been complaining about for years, right. That's really a marketing problem, a leadership problem, and oftentimes a cash flow problem, right? The fact is, we are not that different from so many other industries. We just think we are, right? We think we're different. And that leads us to recreating the wheel or coming up with these complex solutions to otherwise very simple issues. And the reason I know this for a fact is I left my integration company after I sold it and literally dropped into a completely different business, traffic control. I mean, the only commonality there is they have technicians, we have technicians, right? Very different businesses. But I applied the same principles that helped my business to be successful in the integration company to theirs, and we 7x their profit over 15 months, right? And so the fact is that our industry, we all think it's different. We all want to believe that we're, so unique, but the simple business practices that work for everybody else will work for us in just, an adapted way.
Right. And so do you help, how do you get in there and help the business owners focus on that one area? Like, can you go in there and get them to look at that something that's keeping them up at night, and then you can kind of guide them to the right process? And I mean, we have a custom industry. It's in the name. So I would imagine getting them to that place where they can look at commonalities is probably the big challenge going in, right?
Yeah. I mean, what keeps most integrators up at night is actually the unknown. It's a lack of confidence, and it's a lack of financial confidence. Most of them don't understand the financials of their business, and that's okay. They don't have to. Like, we have plenty of members today who solely rely on us to be they're the kings of their financials, right? They don't want to be, and that's okay. That's not their strength. We believe that they should have somebody internally who has that strength. But we're the strategic part of that for them. But ultimately, how we work is we help them to create metrics so that they can sleep at night, because the metrics tell the whole story of what's happening in the business from top to bottom. We can measure everything that's happening in the business. It is essentially the report card for the business. Now, because each business is unique, some of them have different needs. And so we ultimately identify what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and where we should focus. But a lot of that comes through the creation of great data inside of the organization and tracking and managing against that data so that they know what's working and what's not working.
All right, awesome. One last question, Matt. Give us one specific target metric that an integrator should be trying to hit in their business.
Man, that's a great question. So we track more than 30 key metrics at Vital, and we review those monthly with our members. And as I mentioned, that that serves as a report card. The most important metric, and this goes for any business, is gross margin. And second to that is likely labor utilization. Those are the two areas that most integrators have the biggest opportunity. And we look at both of those metrics very differently than than most CPAs and accountants. And in fact, I would say the construction world as a whole focuses fairly heavily on job costing, which we like. We like job costing. Job costing should be a secondary set of metrics to the financial efficiency. And so when we think about gross margin, we look at that, a little different, right? Revenue minus the cost of equipment and parts. But labor utilization, that's pretty easy for nearly any integrator to figure out today. And the way we look at labor utilization is as a financial component, which takes into account not just the job costing component, but also the off the job productivity, right? It takes into account the trips to Home Depot, the burrito breaks in the morning, the washing of the vans, the loading of the vans, all of that stuff is taken into account, because guess what? We're paying our technicians for that work, and sometimes we're paying them overtime to do that, right? So financial efficiency for us is a really important metric, and we measure that as billed hours versus billable hours, right? So how many hours you're paying your technicians, just purely, paid hours, versus how many hours you actually billed and recognized as revenue. And the target for that is 50% or better.
Okay.
Awesome. I think you've kind of hit a lot of really good high points here for integrators. And Tim, I'll throw it back over to you to kind of wrap things up.
Well, thanks. Great stuff, Matt. And I think how can integrators get a hold of you if they want to learn more about your offerings and what you can do for them? What's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So we have a team of 10 now, which I'm really excited about. Our team is incredible. My job every day is to set standards and manage against them and grow the company, which is, I think, different than some integrators in the way they look at their jobs. We have 3 coaches, a couple of QuickBooks process managers, some admin staff, just an incredible team. And the way you can reach out to anybody on our team is just email hello@growwithvital.com. And we have our concierge that'll respond and connect with you and figure out, what you need and who to connect you to. You can also follow me on socials. So I'm at MJ Bernath. That's on Instagram, Facebook. We also have a Vital Facebook page, and we do a lot on LinkedIn. So you can follow myself and Vital on LinkedIn. It's a great place to find us.
Terrific. Well, I mean, I think this is such a great service for integrators. I think it is something everybody should be doing, looking at their business, figuring out what to measure, what's their KPIs, and it's great to catch up with you. And thanks for joining us today. I know your time's very valuable. I want to thank Jason for doing another great podcast. And as I said, we're just starting out with this. So if you like what you see, let us know. You can reach out to us at timb@d-tools.com, jasonkay@d-tools.com, or of course just come visit us at our website. Again, if you like it, go ahead, hit subscribe, Spotify, Apple. And thanks again, Matt. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I really support, of course, everything that you're doing, and especially the fact that we both believe that integrators can and should be running better businesses and live every day to that mission.
Amen. All right.
Thanks,
we'll
Matt.
see you soon.
Thanks, guys.